Hi there, and welcome to our MobileCaddy Developer Workflow webinar, where we'll be talking about using the right tools to enable you to rapidly build mobile applications for Salesforce. Firstly, let me introduce myself. My name is Todd Halfpenny, and I'm the Chief Mobile Technical Architect here at MobileCaddy. My contact details are now on screen, so please feel free to reach out and get in touch. The goal of today will be really to set you in a position where you're ready to run through the MobileCaddy tutorial on building out a mobile application that's really an accounts and contact explorer using Salesforce data, and having that run on your own iPhone or Android mobile phone or tablet. What we're going to be doing is discussing, really reviewing the architecture of MobileCaddy and seeing how your application goes on a journey from being developed on localhost to ending up being running on a device. We're going to have a look at some of the tooling that we've got in place to help you on that journey, and specifically the MobileCaddy CodeFlow and MobileCaddy CLI. We're also going to briefly cover some of the starter apps and extensions that we give you to speed up your development, and look at the CodeFlow control panel and how that enables you to debug your application during development time. We'll have a brief look as well at the Ionic and MobileCaddy APIs and how these are used during development. So first up, really, what is a mobile application and what do we get out of the box? What don't we have to concern ourselves with? Well, first things first, what we're going to be building is hybrid JavaScript applications. These are single page apps really, and with that in mind, we're able to use them in cross-platform environments. So our one code base will be able to run on desktop environments as well as iPhones and Androids and tablets. Our applications initially defined in terms of their metadata and data setup from the platform. This is all point and click, and so it should be used to be good for anyone who's used to the Salesforce platform. A key thing to note about MobileCaddy applications is they're all offline first. And this means that the database encrypted on the device is used for reading and writing. We're not going to be reading and writing direct to the Salesforce platform, but we will be synchronizing our data to and from it. And of course, we're going to be building locally. I suppose what we don't have to consider when we're building mobile applications is key. So let's have a look at some of the points here. Well, first off, I don't need to be a Swift developer for iOS or Java developer for Android, because we're using SPAs, and also the app containers that MobileCaddy supplies as part of our service means that we don't have to concern ourselves with iTunes or Google Play Store submissions. As a developer, I also don't have to worry about how I'm authenticating into Salesforce or SSO. MobileCaddy takes care of that too. I'm definitely not going to have to worry about conflict resolution from a development point of view, although we will be specifying behavior as part of our application definition on the platform. MobileCaddy also gives me the capability to have an offline first and network resilient application without having to worry about building in network retries and handling statuses, etc. MobileCaddy is also going to give us some logging APIs and versioning APIs, which allow me not only as a developer to be able to build quickly, but also to push my updates out to users without having to go through store submissions, as these are over there. So let's have a quick look again at the MobileCaddy architecture. I think you've probably seen a diagram like this before, but it's worth going through again. So in the center here, we have the Salesforce platform, and this is key. This is our platform data, our user data and configuration that already exists, and we're going to want to make use of this again. We're not reinventing the wheel here with MobileCaddy applications. We're already using what you already have. Installed on the platform is the MobileCaddy package, and this is where we set up our metadata for applications. So we're defining a mobile application here by specifying the objects to mobilize into our mobilized tables, along with the fields that we're going to be using and CRUD settings for these. We'll also be defining things such as sync rules and conflict rules. For development, let's go up to the top left, and this is my CodeFlow local development environment. And as I said, we're building out JavaScript hybrid apps. So let's call these SPAs, single page applications. My application will become an SPA bundle containing HTML, CSS and JavaScript. And after I'm building my application, I want to be running it locally. And this is where we come into play with our CodeFlow emulator. This is a browser-based emulator that uses our SPA, but it doesn't just run standalone. What's happening is we're going to, when we run it up, we're going to be authenticating into Salesforce. And our application will have its metadata defined. So we can think of that as a mini platform on the device, specifying the tables, etc. and schema. And this will be being pulled down from here, and our application will use this along with actual application data from the platform. Once our application's been built and we're ready, we will be deploying this SPA bundle up onto the platform, and this will be versioned. This enables us to then, if we're running in an app container, so let's say I'm running on a Windows 10 desktop device, or an iPad, or maybe a Nexus 9. As I'm running in here and my application runs up in one of our MobileCaddy app containers, I'll be authenticating in just as we normally do in CodeFlow. But as well as getting the application definition and application data, I'll also be bringing down the application SPA bundle itself into the app container. And that was the one that was deployed up here. Let's have a look again at this movement of our application from development on localhost here where I'm building it out. And as I'm working, I'll be logging into Salesforce, bringing down the metadata and data for my development use and testing use. And then when I'm ready, I will be bundling this up and deploying it into the platform. And then when I'm running over here on a device, I log into Salesforce. I'll be assigned a version for my particular user and my particular user's device, and that will be sucked down to the container app along with the metadata and data based upon my application. Now we'll look at some of the tooling and stack that's available to a developer of MobileCaddy applications. Well, first off, it's worth noting that the tools we'll be using, we want to be down to you really. Every developer has their own flavour of things and how they want to do stuff. So we're not going to be prescribing you an OS to develop on. We support all three. We'll be using standard tools such as Node and Git, and you'll be able to use the editor of your choice for building out the SPAs. So let's say you're a big VS Code fan, that's absolutely fine. Or maybe you're sticking with Sublime, I know I am at the moment. Or perhaps you're going old school and using Notepad++ or something. We're not going to be trying to wrench you away from these tools here. The stack itself, we can see, looks a bit like this. It's kind of upside down here, but the first layer is Cordova and Electron. These are the wrapper part that talks to the native APIs on our device, be it an iPhone, Android or Windows desktop. We make use of the Angular framework, Angular JavaScript framework. There's a massive community and the applications are pretty amazing. If you ask me, I'm a very big fan. And on top of that, we don't want our users, our developers, to worry about UI frameworks. So we're making use of the incredible Ionic framework here that offers us not only platform continuity across platform and across devices, but it also offers many optimizations and performance improvements. Of course, we have the MobileCaddy layer in here, and then your application code. So this is where you'll be writing your JavaScript, CSS, and markup. And we obviously can't forget Salesforce at the very end here, which is going to be defining our database schema, conflict rules, data types, things like that. And of course, the data itself our application will be consuming and using. So what does CodeFlow give us? Well, these are some of the tools we're going to have a look at in more detail. We mentioned the CLI already and the starter apps and extensions, but it also gives you prescribe some build tasks to be used. You don't have to worry about which unit testing framework to be using or how to lint tools or write your own Webpack or Grunt tasks. These are all taken care of for you. Have a look at the CodeFlow control panel that we mentioned before. But CodeFlow also gives us the ability to record our interactions with Salesforce during our development phase, so we can replay those again. For example, if I'm developing and I'll be reading down, 10,000 account records, that can be time consuming. Maybe I'm developing whilst, working on a train and my connectivity itself isn't very good. If I've got a recorded mock setup of this data, this will be on my local machine and I can run against that instead of hitting Salesforce all the time. It's a definite speed boost for developers. And then we have a one-click deploy. When your app's ready to be bundled up, we have a simple one-button click, bundle that SPA up and send it up to a version in Salesforce ready for consumption by app containers. Let's have a quick look at some of the MobileCaddy CLI commands then as we get in. These are purposely as basic as possible and kind of mirror standards we've seen in other frameworks. The first one here is creating a new project. I'm supplying the MobileCaddy new command. I'm going to give it the name or URL of a starter application. So this could be one of the public ones available on the MobileCaddy GitHub repos, or it could be one that you've designed yourself for a particular industry, so you can reuse them here. And I'm going to give it a project name. Once my project's built, or I've downloaded a teammates project, I can run that up with the MobileCaddy serve command. And there we have the applications then running in my CodeFlow emulator, and it'll be asking for authentication to the platform if I'm not using mock data, and my application will be up and running. Example here of passing in a --rec flag into this MobileCaddy serve command, and this is telling the MobileCaddy serve I want to record my interactions with Salesforce. Again, you can see these all documented and they're quite simple. Let's have a look at one of the starter applications that we've got. The example going to come up on screen is a proof of concept starter app. Like I see down here, I've got a list of accounts. I can filter these with live filter. That's pretty cool. And jump in, I can see the details on the right hand side of the page, and I've got in the list of contacts available. The starter app also gives me this Cloud icon tells me whether I'm online or offline, which is quite handy. And in the menu I get common things like an outbox. In this case I've got no records to sync. And we also get a built-in settings page as part of each of the starter applications. This is useful not only for diagnostics, but also an admin section which is useful during development, where I can do things like change the connection settings that my device might have, a few recovery tools, and up here, for example, I've got a mobile table inspector where I can see, so I kind of see right into the raw database tables on my device. And here's a button that does my deploy to Salesforce. That's a nice one-click approach. See, starter applications are full project skeletons, really. Some are full in a sense that they have no real logic in them, apart from the things like the settings and the outbox are available. And other ones like this proof of concept one are handy for particular industries. And the idea here is to jumpstart your development, so you're not having to worry about, the workflow and tooling that you need. That's all there for you. You can get straight into building out the business logic and working with the application that's been defined on the platform. Why will we use these? Well, yeah, we want to get going as fast as we can. And the POC one, for example, is really handy. There's no tool like a POC really to sell an example to a client, prospective client, say this is what your application could look like, and this is it in a matter of days. As well as the starter applications, we also have MobileCaddy extensions. These are kind of pre-built chunks of code for common use cases. So we have an extension that handles interacting with Apex REST on the platform, so custom REST endpoints on the platform. There we take care of things like authentication, token management, so you don't have to worry about that. You just call your endpoint as you want to. Other examples are global search, which is really handy, and recent items. So these are things that are commonly used, and we give you that code out of the box, and we'll be maintaining those on an ongoing basis. Let's have a quick look then at the CodeFlow control panel tool. This is a sister application that runs up on your local development environment when you run your application. You can see here, this is the name on my application. I can see the version it's at and whether I'm logged into a Salesforce org. And up in the top right, this is the username that I'm logged into. I can also see the last git commit, which is quite handy. And down the bottom of the screen, what I can see here is a stream of connection sessions. So these are the transactions my application makes to and from the platform. Here I can see that that's my user, and I've been refreshing this lead table and also sending updates to it. If I have a look on the menu on the left hand side, I can see I've got a list of the tables, and if I jump into one of these, you can see that I've got information about the CRUD settings for that particular table, the sync type, and also a filterable list of the fields that have been mobilized in this particular version of the metadata. Again, if I have a look at each field, I can see the CRUD settings, data types, and other pieces of metadata associated with the fields. And actually, by scrolling down, I can also have a nice side view into the table's content itself. I think maybe some of these account names are familiar to you. Let's have a quick look at one of the other tables just to show you what else is in there. Here's our contact table. Again, you can see the same information's there. And this is really handy if, for example, you want to confirm that the metadata that somebody says has been mobilized is actually mobilized in your particular version of the metadata your application is using. Let's have a quick look at some of the APIs then. So MobileCaddy APIs are split into three main types, I suppose. And we'll go into some of the details in the next slide. But essentially we have CRUD APIs for database interactions, synchronization APIs for pushing and pulling data to and from the platform itself, from the device, and versioning APIs, handling do I have a new version of this application available for my particular user on my particular device, and what should I do in case I have that. MobileCaddy applications, of course, have access to third-party libraries. We're able to access hardware, like I said, through the Cordova or Electron wrappers. Common plugins are available for these, and your application will be built out with those in. So maybe you want to have access to Force Touch or facial recognition. Let's say you want to use some utility libraries like D3 for charting. You can pull those into your MobileCaddy projects too. And let's say, I don't know, you want to use an Angular date picker component that's publicly available, or maybe one of your colleagues has written. Those also can be brought into your MobileCaddy projects. Let's have a quick look at some of the MobileCaddy APIs in here. Reading records. So here we're going to be reading records from a particular table in the encrypted smart store. The first example up here, I'm reading in all of the records from the contact table. MobileCaddy APIs are mostly promise-based, And you can see here I get back a result, and this result object has some form of records attribute property. What happens if I don't want to read all of the contacts? Maybe I just want to read one specific one. Well, we expose SOCL as well. Here's an example. So I'm reading all the fields from contact for a particular contact ID. And again, this is SOCL based, and it's a simple, here's my table and here's my SOCL. You don't have to concern yourself with any paging or cursor management. MobileCaddy will take care of that for you. Here's a quick example of inserting a record. Now I'm just going to create a JavaScript object that has a name of my name, and then I'm calling the insert record and passing it the table name of this object. MobileCaddy will take care of any offline parent-child relationship management for you, so you don't need to be concerning yourselves with that either in here. So inserting a record really is as straightforward as it can be. Down at the bottom we can see this syncing tables, and here's a very simple example of syncing one particular mobile table. In this case it's the contact one. There are many options you can pass into these calls here to alter behavior, tame behavior as your application might want in a specific circumstance. So let's say you do want to sync your contact table, but you know what? You don't want to bother reading down any records if you might have already read them in the last 5 minutes. When it comes to mobile development, optimization is key and efficiency is key. So let's say you're not interested in calling your contacts table if you pull them down in the last 30 seconds, but your code is saying, right, here's the point I want to synchronize, but hold on, I already have quite recent records. I'm not going to bother about reading them down again. More information will be found in the developer API specs. So let's have a quick recap then of our webinar. We went through a review of the architecture and including some of the benefits. So we're building out hybrid JavaScript applications, so cross-platform by default using standards tools and open APIs. This will give us speed and standard-based development, including the container apps and versioning that MobileCaddy offers. Not to mention, of course, the network resiliency that comes with an offline-first application without having to worry about that from a developer's point of view. That's all there for you. We had a look at how our application, once built, gets pushed across from the local device into the Salesforce platform and can be consumed onto a running device like an iPad. We had a look through some of the tooling that's available and how it's standard-based as possible, and then also the extra enriched features that MobileCaddy gives you. And we looked at CodeFlow and the CLI in more detail, and of course our starter applications as well. We had a brief look at the CodeFlow control panel and how it enables our developer to see kind of inside the schema, have a look at which fields have been mobilized and the metadata associated with your application. And lastly, we had a look at some of the APIs that MobileCaddy offers and some examples of those in use. So what are we going to do really? The next steps after this webinar, we're going to be going off and building our application based upon the tutorial of the web address at the bottom of the screen here. And this is the first step we're going to do is when we have our partner org set up for us to build against our developer org, we're going to do one thing first off, and that's create a provisioning record. This is something that you need to do as a developer, one time only for a particular application. And this basically sets up extra access settings for your particular user to say, do you know what, I'm a CodeFlow user of this application, and you'll get some extra developer calls created. We're then going to go off and install the MobileCaddy CLI, lovely npm install command here, nice straightforward. And with that in place, we're then going to create our application with the MobileCaddy new command that we covered earlier. In this case, we'll be using the Ionic shell side menu starter, and this is the one that's used in our tutorial. Once we've done that, we'll be able to run up our application in our local development environment with this MobileCaddy serve command. Then we'll have the application running in our CodeFlow emulator, and we'll be prompted to log into our Salesforce org, and then we'll be consuming our metadata and data as defined as part of the tutorial. So what do we need to be doing on this developer track? Well, we need to have our developer org set up. So you'll need to contact MobileCaddy to have this assigned to you. And then you're going to go off and hopefully complete the accounts and contact tutorial. It should take less than 2 hours. And by the end of it, you'll have an app that you've built running your own Android or iOS device. After that, well, the world's your oyster. Go off and build more apps. And let's start bringing excellent mobile applications to the Salesforce ecosystem. We'll cover off a few communication channels here on this kind of penultimate slide. Here's ways you can get in contact with MobileCaddy, and it's worth noting that partners get a dedicated partner channel on Slack for informal queries during their MobileCaddy usage. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed the webinar, and I'll be taking some questions after this. I can see a few have come in. Thanks very much.